welcome to another Zelda podcast. I'm David, your host tonight, and tonight I am joined with a very special guest, Carly. Carly, how are you?
I'm doing great, David. How's it going?
I'm well. We just jumped right into it. I couldn't wait. Well, we've been chatting a little bit here, but Carly, you had an opportunity to. We've known each other a little bit through Patreon and just through fandom and all that kind of stuff and little social media things, and shared a couple through different group things. Shared a couple different like video chats and all that kind of stuff. And about 6 months ago, maybe it was a year ago, you said, "Hey, my husband Tyler and I are going to be swinging through Chicago."
Right.
And pretty much we know what that means. It's like, well, let's do an episode.
Yeah, let's hang out.
Yeah. Well, I think, if I don't want to speak for you. Maybe you said something like, "Oh, let's get together." And I hope that I was like, "No, we also need to record an episode."
Yes, that's exactly how it was.
So this is so great. This is exciting.
Yes, very excited to be here.
I also asked you, well, I want to talk a little bit about your time in Chicago. Is it your first time coming to Chicago?
Yes, this is the first time. Very exciting.
Buffalo, New York, I think, right?
Yes.
Flying over. So still kind of city-esque stuff, but, well, I don't actually know how urban Buffalo, New York is.
So Buffalo itself, urban. This part reminds me...
This neighborhood we're in right now?
This neighborhood that we were in reminds me of, like, North Buffalo, I feel like. But there's North Buffalo and South Buffalo and the east side and the west side. And then we live within the suburbs of Buffalo. I work in the suburbs. So...
Got it.
Very, very different, diverse neighborhoods, just depending on where you are.
Yeah, cool. Where are you guys staying in the city? What hotel did you end up finding? I know you were looking down by the lake for a little bit.
Yeah. So right now we are staying somewhere within the Magnificent Mile.
Yeah. Oof.
So
yeah.
You're shopping and restaurants and being very touristy while we're here.
That's fine. That's a lot of good energy down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We beforehand. So I'm here because work brought me here for a conference. For the work that I do, and we were staying just south of the river. So we got to see the river turn green, which was
You were here for it.
We weren't here for the official dyeing, but we were here to see it. We arrived the day after St. Patrick's Day.
How long does the river stay green? Does it take like a couple days to dilute?
We had lunch by the river today, and I'm pretty sure like it's just now starting to turn a little less green, but still noticeably not the right color.
That's just the actual Chicago. No. Actual Chicago River. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, it's so funny. I took a history of Chicago class at Columbia about a year ago, and the original Chicago River the flow out to Lake Michigan was so slow that they almost thought it was just a bog, not even a real river.
Oh, okay.
And so, like, historically, until they did the whole thing where they reversed the river and now it goes to the Mississippi, which is what it does. It technically drains Lake Michigan to the Mississippi River now. But it used to be a river that comes into Lake Michigan. And so, like, historically, the Chicago River isn't the cleanest, we'll say. It's like, you can go kayaking, but don't touch the water.
Yeah, there was, when we were walking down by the Riverwalk, there was like a sticker that was stuck to the sidewalk, and it said, "I drank the green river and lived."
Oh, my gosh.
I'm like, where is the person if the sticker is stuck to the ground? Where are they? So a city river is a city river, and it's a lot of fun. There's actually a new river walk about 5 years ago that they built along there. It's awesome to hang out down there. I don't want to throw any shade on the Chicago River, but who knows? Maybe it's always a little green. We, of course, did the other touristy things. We walked down to the Navy Pier. We went on the Ferris wheel.
You did? You kind of have to if it's your first time.
We had the deep dish pizza.
Okay. Where'd you go? Uno's?
No, we went to Giordano's.
Giordano's. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm a big fan.
Any thoughts? Yeah.
Buffalo pizza, very different. We're known for like having a Buffalo Pizza Fest, and don't want to say that I'm a pizza connoisseur by any means, but we don't have deep dish. I think we have just a handful of places in Buffalo that make it, but I feel like this was more authentic. I was a fan, so
yeah. Okay, right. Yeah. Giordano's and Uno, they're kind of the two that are the most known. Okay. It's definitely filling. It's I remember the first time I got like a little 10-inch Chicago pizza. And I thought, okay, I'll have like 3 slices. The second slice, I was like,
yes, I think I didn't eat until like the afternoon of the next day, just full of cheese.
It's just pizza casserole almost, you know what I mean?
Basically.
But what are your thoughts on the sauce on top of the cheese?
Normally I'm not a super saucy person, but if it's the right kind of sauce, like I'm okay with it. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was good.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I also kind of like that the crust gets a little crispy. You can almost eat it like a breadstick when you get done.
Yes.
You just chomp at it.
You kind of get to the end and it all dipped in the rest of the sauce that's already fallen off.
Yeah,
and the toppings that are in the cheese. So
awesome. Cool. Well, it sounds like it's been a pretty good trip for you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that it got so cold this week. It was literally 70 degrees 2 weeks ago. Today, as you were coming over, snow. There was a snowstorm this afternoon, and it's the middle of March right now as we record this.
But the ironic part is that you say snowstorm, and this is just a casual day for us.
Yeah. I
like
mean,
if we were at home and not walking around constantly, my husband would be wearing like a hoodie, no gloves. And meanwhile, I've got a hat, I've got my hood up, my thick gloves, my boots. So
I see. Well, I'm so happy that the two of you were able to visit. Obviously, it was for work. I'm so happy we're able to have the time to hang out here.
Yeah.
I was gushing a little bit there just to talk about Chicago a bit, but we haven't even told our listeners. I mean, they've read the title, but we haven't even told our listeners what we're talking about tonight or anything like that.
Which is the most exciting part of the day.
I'm going to throw it to you. Why don't you set it up? Because I did kind of reach out to you and say, hey, is there anything you kind of want to talk about?
So I've been a fan of Zelda for, at least a quarter of a century now.
Nice.
Over 25 years. But I think a game that is near and dear to my heart and to many is Twilight Princess.
Yeah.
And we are here tonight to talk about the dungeons of Twilight Princess.
Absolutely.
Perhaps give our unofficial ranking.
Yeah, we're doing a top 10. We're doing a top 10 dungeons. And my favorite part of when we were messaging back and forth, I don't know why, but I thought Twilight Princess literally had like 14 dungeons. I think I've said it on air. I think like in season 2, I was like, wow, the 14 dungeons in Twilight Princess is amazing.
Well, we never claimed to be experts. We're not the experts.
That's right. Just fans loving a game series. But when we were talking about it, you and I said, yeah, that's cool. I think we can do a top 10 dungeons. I mean, we've never really done it that way. And there's not many games that have that many dungeons in them. And Twilight Princess has 14. And you very politely texted back, you're like, well, yeah, I actually think it's 9.
Don't mean to correct you, but...
You're like, I don't know if we can get the 10. And then I realized that if we're stretching it here a little bit, calling it top 10. But I think you'll talk about your favorite 5. I'll talk about my favorite 5. I'm sure there's going to be some overlap. And maybe we can deduce... If there's any overlap, you can kind of co-decide at the end what the others might be.
Sounds good.
However, top 10 dungeons in Twilight Princess is, if we count the Palace of...
The Cave of Ordeals.
Cave of Ordeals. And then I'm thinking about, there's the one, I've never played the Cave of Ordeals, but I did the Wii HD Wolf Link dungeon, which I think is similar.
I've heard of it. I
Cave
played
of Crystals or the Cave of something. It's basically a gauntlet.
Yeah.
So I think if we count at least what did you call it? Cave of Wonders?
It would be nice if it was the Cave of Wonders, but no, the Cave of Ordeals.
Oh, that's what it was. We'll count that, and that gives us our 10. But I have a feeling I know what the 10th one's going to be.
Well, admittedly, I don't know that I've ever played the Cave of Ordeals successfully.
Ooh, sorry.
I've attempted it, but maybe not successfully.
I don't know if I ever even tried it. And that's probably going to be the lowest on my list, too. But anyways, I've got some listener feedback here, and then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the whole thing.
Sounds great.
Let's see. Mostly Spotify and Apple Podcasts tonight. I've been doing a thing with Katie lately this season where we're going back and forth with reading. Would you be comfortable reading some of these? I don't mean to just throw it at you on air like this.
No, that's okay.
I'll do this first one. Let's just see what we get.
Okay.
All right, cool. So here over at Apple Podcasts, this is Spotify. We get interesting. This is from a listener called Hero of the Wild at a little Korok. 3 months ago, they said, hi, I've never played Twilight, but I have a Wii U, so I hope my parents will let me get it. Smiley face, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 green heart emojis. Well, Hero of the Wild, I hope you get to play Twilight Princess.
Be aware, listener, that you may hear some spoilers, but...
Oh my God. Yeah,
We hope that this episode gets you excited, but stop listening now.
Right now, at this very moment, and then come back.
And then come back and let us know what you think of the dungeons.
Yeah, thank you, Hero of the Wild. Let's see, let's try this one. I don't even know. This is another Spotify, and it's for some episode. Why don't you give this, just kind of carefully hold that there. I've got the little handle on the back there you are. And what do we got?
Okay, let's see. This is from a month ago. This is from a listener named Eli on Spotify. I love this podcast. I'm 14 years old and started Zelda 2 years ago and have played 16 games. My favorite place to live would probably be Windfall Island in Wind Waker.
Oh.
I love how bustling it feels.
I love it. Yeah, this was a comment on our top 10 places to live episode that was kind of a recent one. And Windfall Island. Yeah.
I love Wind Waker.
Yeah, cool.
Another favorite game, but yeah, Windfall. There's a lot going on there. A lot of side quests.
When we're done with this episode, I'm gonna do a little Patreon episode with you about your introduction to the Zelda series. But I can't help but not ask right now. What was your first Zelda game?
My first introduction to Zelda was the original.
Yeah.
But the first game I ever really played was Wind Waker.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Interesting.
A lot of years sitting on the sideline watching my dad play the original.
Oh, fascinating.
A couple of friends growing up who had Ocarina of Time. But my first hands-on experience, Wind Waker.
How long did it take for you to circle back to Ocarina? A couple years? A couple decades?
Couple decades.
Yeah.
My husband found a Nintendo 64 on Facebook Marketplace
Love
during
it.
the pandemic. And I have a very funny story about the N64. When we first bought it,
Yeah.
we hooked it up to our big TV, our smart TV, and fully expecting it not to work. But what we didn't realize is, when the Wii, we also have the Wii plugged in our big TV.
Okay.
And when it's off, the light is either red or it's yellow if it's connected to the internet. There's always a light on.
Right.
So when we plugged the N64, it was already on. Like when they gave it to us, it was already on.
Just the little dip switch accidentally was clicked to up because it's
So-
a physical switch.
Right. So the light was red, and we didn't think.
Oh.
So the N64 might have been on for 2 weeks straight. It didn't, nothing worked. Obviously, the connection was, so we
Yeah.
had to go and order a few more pieces so we can do the HDMI and whatnot.
Yes.
We now have it plugged in and working, so it's good to say that it was on for 2, maybe 3 weeks, and it works.
I mean,
And I'm playing Ocarina of Time now.
oh, I love it. Whoa, original hardware.
Yes,
Yeah, for the first time.
for the very first time.
Wow.
I've watched walkthroughs.
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of ZeldaDungeon.net.
Yep.
If I ever need help with a walkthrough, I know that they're a friend of the podcast.
They're like
so
our friends now. They're like
So-
our friends now. No big deal.
Very fancy.
No, they're amazing.
Yeah, so I have been a big fan of their walkthroughs. So I have seen the walkthrough of Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
I follow the lore. I know what has happened.
Mhm.
But now I'm finally playing for myself. And I think it's good that as an adult that I'm playing, because if I was playing when it originally came out, when I was like 7 or 8,
Yeah.
I probably would not have known what to do.
Yeah, I agree. There was my sister who's about 7 years younger than me. Pardon me. She would play Ocarina from time to time, but I think she thought the entire game was just Kokiri Forest. Like never even got past the Deku Tree and was totally satisfied. Played for hours, what I
Right,
mean?
just going around in
just thinking, okay, this is
circles.
where- Yeah, and I also kind of remember me playing like original Nintendo games like Star Tropics and stuff like that, and really kind of thinking that opening island and that first level was as a kid, that's just all the farther you get. But
Right.
but also sometimes as a kid, it's like it satiates. It's like I don't know, your attention span's so short anyway as a kid. That's like, yeah, okay.
Well, there's
I played
that. The first time you see Mario 64 after seeing like Super Mario Brothers, like 1, 2, and 3. And then you see Mario 64, you're like, oh, I'm fine to just walk around this castle. Oh, these paintings are nice.
Yeah, you're right.
And then you get to a level and it's not linear at all. And you're, what am I doing?
Yeah, totally. I'm going to keep moving here. It's heavy on Spotify, and it'll probably be heavy on Apple Podcasts afterwards. Erafim said, I think this is our most recent episode. I think this was off of our Breath to Tears episode. However, after 3 years of continuously falling in love with AZP, between breaks of being too stressed to have free time, I finally caught up with the episodes. 2 green heart emojis. Thank you so much for this wonderful show, green heart emoji. Well, cool. Erafim, I hope I'm saying your screen name right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for finding us. This I love these kind of messages where we just get to hear about people finding the show and digging into the deep parts. And okay, here's something from Kyle 3 days ago. This might be actually from the Breath to Tears. This might be the most recent feedback we have tonight. Let's see what
Okay.
Kyle has to say.
Kyle on Spotify. Small story spoiler, but maybe when Zelda gets sent to the past, she stepped on a butterfly, which changed the direction of the sun.
yeah, we were talking about how the sun's in a different
Yes.
spot in Tears. It's so weird.
I don't know if I've noticed that.
Oh, really? It's just so strange. It's a good maybe 120 degrees, like in a completely different direction.
Okay.
And so for me, it's very odd because I'm used to seeing shadows move in certain ways, and
Right.
when I play Breath of the Wild, I kind of play with the map turned off, and I like to try to visually memorize where I'm going and stuff like that. So there were times in Tears where I'd be in the same spot, and I'm like, why? What? It's a dream. Something's weird. Something's different. And then when I finally realized, oh no, the shadows of the trees are going to the left, not to the right, even though I'm looking in the same angle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It really threw me off. But
I forgot. You have said before, I have heard you say that you don't play with the map typically.
for Breath and Tears,
Yes.
I'm doing like a full. I'm not trying to do hard mode, but I'm just doing like a put me in the wilderness mode, where I just I play the
Okay.
game slowly. if I just kind of walk that way, or I kind of walk that way, I go where I want. And I still use the minus sign menu, or the minus sign map. I'll go in and like look at my map,
Right.
but I turn the HUD map off always, because for me, in the beginning of Breath of the Wild, the first couple hours I played on the Wii U back in 2017 when we started this show, sometimes I found myself looking at the HUD map more than even the screen, because you're just like, oh, am I on the road?
You're trying to follow the path.
Am I on the path?
Right.
And I was using that for information instead of just like, look at all this beautiful stuff in front of you. And so that's when I kind of was like, I think I'm going to turn the map off. I think I'm playing a 2D top-down game inside this map, and I'm not like letting the environment be my experience. And that's when I made that choice.
My prerogative, I try to go to the towers first and make sure that my map is filled out. But then after that, it's just free reign. As long as I can kind of make sure I'm going somewhere. But then your horse always keeps you on the path anyway, so. Yeah,
that's true. Okay, here we go into Apple Podcasts. A couple more we'll push through, and then we'll get started with our top 10. This is kind of cute. Over on Apple Podcasts, Jack Attack 108 back in February. The title of the review is Another Review of AZP. 5 stars over at Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much. I still love the podcast. Great, thank you. The fact that you are getting so many guests in your episodes is crazy to me. Well, one more added to the list here, Carly.
Hello.
I was going to say, by the way, when you're talking about liking Zelda Dungeon, just not 2 months ago, Mosis, the creator of Zelda Dungeon, was sitting in that chair right now that you're sitting in. All right. I'm still working. It was an audio medium, but Carly put her hands up like, ta-da! I'm still working on Tears of the Kingdom. I am almost to the end, though. I also got the Link's Awakening remake, like you suggested. Well, awesome, Jack Attack 108. I think the Link's Awakening remake is fantastic. I've talked about it before. Have you played the Link's Awakening remake, Carly?
I have not.
Cool.
It's on the list. I really want to get through Ocarina of Time, and I feel like I don't want to be distracted.
If you are genuinely in that game right now, I don't recommend playing any others. I've had moments in my life where I've bounced between Zelda games. I'm like, oh, a little bit of Minish Cap, oh, maybe a little bit of Oracle of Seasons, maybe a little bit of Skyward Sword, and you start to kind of these games are so nice when they're absorbed as their own, start to end experience. That if you do kind of just jump around and bounce around some of the context, or I would remember a puzzle from one game and accidentally think it was part of a dungeon for another game, stay in Ocarina. You got this.
Okay. Sound advice.
Cool, Dave. Cool.
Nope, that's sound advice. Okay.
This is an Apple Podcast review, and then I think we'll move on after this.
All right. We have a 5-star review here from a user named, David, I don't know.
Here, let me look. What do we got?
Let's see. How would you pronounce that?
Hehhziz.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
This is
Well, thank you for the 5-star review. Please talk about the remake of Link's Awakening.
Oh my gosh.
Especially make an episode about the amazing music. The music episodes are amazing, and please do more. I would also like to see the music of Spirit Tracks and A Link Between Worlds because of the actual musical instruments playing A Link to the Past music.
Yes.
This is by far the best Zelda podcast and has made me want to play more of the games.
That's awesome. I think we've read this one already. I think this one accidentally got in there, but that is still fantastic. Thank you so much. Fine, double read. I love it. Thank you for that, because I remember the do an episode on another Zelda or Links to Past music just triggered for me.
Yeah.
And actually, I can tell you right now, it's in the books. So the season 6 season finale episode is going to be a Link's Awakening music episode. So I hope in about a month or two you're able to enjoy that episode very much. And the plan is, Carly, that we're going to pick songs from Link's Awakening, but not only listen to the 2019 version, the orchestrated versions, which are cool, but we're going to first listen to the 8-bit versions from the Game Boy first.
Oh, that's going to be an excellent episode.
So we'll listen to 8-bit and then listen to the remake version of the same song. And I can't wait. I think it's going to be super cool.
Now I have to get through Ocarina of Time just so I can get to Link's Awakening. Just going to have to blow through it all.
Don't rush Ocarina. It's worth it. Savor it. It's a great game. Wonderful game. I'm playing it on the 3DS right now, and there's a little part of me that wishes I was playing it on original hardware. But the 3DS one's very nice too.
Yeah.
Carly.
Good to know.
Let's do this.
Okay.
I got to check our time. We've been chatting a lot. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're good. So today we're going to be making a top 10 list of the 10 dungeons in Twilight Princess, which basically means we're ranking them, but we're getting a little clever with our format here, and I'm in full support of this.
Okay.
So the way we normally do top 10 episodes is that each person picks 5 of a thing, right? As of course, as you know.
Right.
I have picked I think what would be my 5 top dungeons of Twilight Princess. Obviously, the inference or the implication or whatever is that there's going to be another 5 that would be in the bottom, because it's not like one of these things where it's like top 5, ingredient items where there's hundreds
where there's
of them,
many.
right? And I'm guessing and hoping that you've done the same, that you've kind of picked your top 5, and then we'll see how this susses out and what this turns into.
I have a top 5, but I also have some notes about all of the dungeons.
Love it.
So I played Twilight Princess a handful of times myself to prepare for this. ZeldaDungeon.net, thank you. But I did start playing a little bit before we left. And it is very difficult to play Twilight Princess or, any of the linear games after playing Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom.
Really? Now, I don't disagree, but why do you say that? That's interesting.
Well, first of all, you can't just go anywhere you want. Right? Why can't I climb up this wall? Or why is Link climbing so slow?
Yeah, well, yes.
And also, going up to the Snow Peak ruins, which we'll talk about. Isn't Link cold? Shouldn't I have to give him something to make sure? Shouldn't he be wearing warmer clothes? And now that you think about that, because we've been playing Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom for so long, it's naturally ingrained to think about that now. Even in Ocarina of Time, I'm still why can't I scale this wall?
Yes. Or even just a world where, remember the days when invisible walls were just part of the level design and you just accepted it?
Yeah, you're trying to get to a spot on the map now, and it's no, you need to go through this door and follow the linear path.
Yeah.
And normally I'm very pro-linear. I did struggle with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom at first. I'm used to it now, but, I come from Wind Waker and Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, so I'm okay, I got to get used to this. But now that I'm used to it, it's kind of hard to go back. Yeah.
And for its time, we've already said a million times on the show how Wind Waker could be interpreted as an open world game, at least when you're on the ocean.
Right.
But Twilight Princess kind of tried to do a little bit of that with how it stream loads its Hyrule Field.
Right.
You can go from section to section, and they get real clever. You just go into tiny cannons, and it slowly loads the way that an open world game would load content as you're coming towards it. But I will say that I think Twilight Princess at least tries to get creative with its invisible walls. At least when you're in Hyrule Field, it's it's a huge cliff. And we will still render the mountains on the other side. But of course your brain goes, yes, I can't cross this cliff. So they put some effort into the invisible walls.
It continued to get better.
Snow Peak is a bit of a hallway getting to it.
Right.
You're kind of going up the mountain and stuff like that.
Right. You're not allowed to just explore. You have to follow the scent.
I love Twilight Princess is actually it's one of my absolute favorite Zelda games. And my least favorite part about it is those scent areas, because it's almost the opposite of exploration. You switch into the wolf view and you actually literally can see less. You know what I mean?
It's like tunnel vision. You can only see the scent.
Yeah, and I wonder about that sometimes. But anyways, I kind of liked the scent part when you go into Castletown and you got to go to the doctor and do other different things. That was always kind of fun, but I digress. I did a little bit of research here before we start talking about our top 5. We'll probably do, obviously, 4 and 5. We'll take our break and we'll do 1, 2, and 3, and then build the rest of the list.
Okay.
I was a little curious because of my completely inexcusable error of having there not be 14 dungeons in Twilight Princess. I don't know where my brain remembered, because I think I remembered there's there's 3, and then you go get the shards or the mirror pieces, and then there's another 5 after that.
And there's so many side quests that feel like you're building up to something. It's easy to get lost in it.
Absolutely. So it turns out that there is 9. There's 10 if we count the little bonus dungeon. And I found a graphic online, a little chart here that shows all of the games up just before Breath of the Wild and how many dungeons are in each game. And so, believe it or not, the game that actually has the most dungeons, according to this data that I found, is Link to the Past with 12.
Wow.
Is that right? Because maybe we're Dark World, maybe it's the first 3, and then we're doing Dark World and...
Okay.
Well, that means if there's 11 dungeons, if you counting Hyrule Castle, I suppose. Though one thing actually that's interesting is, so Twilight Princess is 9. According to this, Legend of Zelda is also 9, the very first one. So Twilight Princess is actually equal to the first.
There. Okay.
Because it is the 8 levels, and then it's... Wait a second. Isn't level 8 the actual Ganon? No, I think there is 9. Anyways. Adventure to Link only has 6 palaces. Link's Awakening is back at 8. A lot of these games land around the 8, which I think kind of tracks.
Pretty standard.
Ocarina of Time is technically 8, even though it feels like there could be more. You get the first 3, little
first three.
mini dungeons, and then it's kind of just the 5 around, right? Which
Right.
would be 8.
And then if you count Hyrule Castle,
I think this chart isn't counting Hyrule
Okay,
Castles because
okay.
honestly, Twilight Princess on this chart says 8, and if we count
okay,
Hyrule
so then
Castle,
we're not
that's
counting
9.
that. Okay,
So that makes a lot of sense. Well, does that mean that there's 13 in whatever? Doesn't matter. Wind Waker, we all know it, but only 5. Oh, but I guess if you count the castle, 6. There's kind of a castle.
Right.
4 Swords. Obviously, the Zelda game that has the technically least amount of dungeons is Majora's Mask at 4. So Twilight Princess just kind of comes in right at the middle here. Other games that have about the same amount of dungeons, be it 8 or 9, like Twilight Princess, are Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, Ocarina of Time, Oracle of Seasons, Oracle of Ages, Four Swords Adventures, Twilight Princess, and Phantom Hourglass. So actually, it's kind of on average here, even though I had this weird thought that it was like the largest Zelda game. And again, I think to your point, it feels large because there's a lot of stuff you do between the dungeons. So, I just looked at my top 5 again, and I'm kind of reconsidering. No, I'm going to stick to it.
I struggled with actually ranking them. I'm not going to lie.
My favorite thing to ask whenever we do a top 10 is like, what was your... I'll ask you to provide yours first.
Okay.
But, no, I'll go first so you get the last one. Remember how this works?
Yes,
you get the final one?
Sounds good.
So I'll go first, but before we do that, what was kind of your logic in picking some of your favorite dungeons or the top 10 for Twilight Princess?
Definitely the mini boss and the boss, how I felt about the battles with that. The design of the dungeon, both aesthetic and...
like the puzzles or
the
whatever.
Puzzles.
Like the logic of it, if I may.
Yeah, and just general, like, and the soundtrack, the background noise.
No, that works.
The dungeon music. If it's a good time in there, or if it's
if it's a good time,
if it's a good time while you're there, or if you're struggling.
Good time.
I will say, Twilight Princess. I did a little bit of research leading up to this, and someone said Twilight Princess is definitely in like one of the top creepiest Zeldas, like creepy vibes.
Oh, absolutely. I think so.
There was a funny TikTok that I saw, and it was like, Nintendo is such a family-friendly console. And then it like is all of the scenes from Twilight Princess that kind of make you go, oh, a little creepy. Okay.
I remember playing it, and my roommate at the time, 20 years ago or whatever it was, he was like, oh, I like that the game's actually kind of scary. I like that the Scatullas look like spiders. I like that, and I liked that too at the time. And of course it was an aesthetic response, conversation with what happened with Wind Waker.
Right.
Like Nintendo did that. Twilight Princess was the first teen-rated Zelda game.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I could see it.
And then it went back down to general, and then it went back up to teen with Breath of the Wild.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's some connections there. But yeah, I think absolutely. Some of the music gets real weird in Twilight Princess. We did a Twilight Princess music episode back in season 3.
Yeah.
And I remember Kate was the one that prepared all those files. And as I was listening, it was just like...
I definitely think one of my comments was, this feels like Friday the 13th. And Jason is around the corner. Yeah. Like, that's how I feel.
Yeah, totally. So I did a lot of aesthetic and, I guess, vibes as well.
It's okay.
And then some of the like standout puzzly kinds of things. But I think I mostly went for for me, Twilight Princess, playing the game for the first time, for me on the GameCube back in the day, was like, it was everything I loved Ocarina, but everything I wanted Ocarina to be or to be next, Twilight Princess gave that to me.
Okay.
Graphically and aesthetically, and just like being in the environment, having things feel cool and real and all of that. So I think that might have been my main factor. I know for a fact I didn't consider bosses at all. I realized it. As you said it, I was like, oh, that's a thing to think about. I didn't even put it in there. Yeah. So I'm going to do my first one.
Okay.
And I'm trying to not have it be a hot take. This is real. Oh, yeah, right. We're going bottom to top. Okay, never mind. I almost did my top one. It's been a while since I've done a top 10.
Okay.
My 5th favorite dungeon in Twilight Princess,
drum roll please,
is the Forest Temple. Honestly, the very first one.
Okay.
Yeah, I as the 5th, I love it mostly because it was it's a little bit. My relationship with the Twilight Princess dungeons was, I liked Wind Waker. I remember playing Wind Waker and thinking like, yeah, this is cool. This is a real Zelda game. But and I'm not even like a graphics guy that much. I don't really care about graphics. But for some reason, Twilight Princess made me feel like I was back in Ocarina so much that with the Forest Dungeon, just like being in the woods, the like Deku tree feelings happening, having little things like I remember the first. I could do without the monkey puzzle, honestly.
Really?
Yeah,
I think the monkeys are a highlight of the forest.
Well. If it's on your list, we can return to it. But would you like to talk about it right now? Oh, that's me actually trying to figure out if it's on your list or not. So you like the monkeys? I mean, the monkeys as characters are cool and cute. I don't mind monkeys in Zelda games. I think the reason I didn't love the monkeys was because once you realize, oh, I'm just collecting them to swing farther.
Right.
It was a little less exciting because it's one of those things where you solve the puzzle and then it's like, now I'm just going to spend time doing the puzzle.
Fair.
I really love puzzles where you have those moments of like the get it happens while you need it, you know?
Got it.
But I don't know. Would you like to speak about the monkeys a little bit?
For an introduction dungeon, right? Because this is the first dungeon that we see in Twilight Princess. I think it's a really good introduction, and I think the monkeys help with that creepy factor of this. I have read somewhere that some feel that the Forest Temple is like the remnants of the great Deku tree and Ocarina of Time.
It kind of feels like it when you're in there sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. So
I feel like the monkeys just kind of help calm your fears for this being your first dungeon. You're going to ease into it. Like they kind of say there's going to be some puzzles, but let's start you off with this monkey puzzle first.
You know, that's a really good point. Yeah. And because it's like a hub thing where you get your three little micro puzzles and you bring back and it's starting to teach you certain things. I enjoy the wind puzzles with spinning the platforms and stuff. I enjoyed all of that very much. I loved that there are parts of this dungeon that feel, I'll say, epic. Whenever you're like in a dungeon and all of a sudden the ground is miles below you, or all of a sudden you go into a new room and because you wouldn't get that stuff in Ocarina, you go into a new room, you're like, oh, this is a huge cavern or cave or something.
Right.
For me, the edges of that dungeon bring those feelings in for me. Gale Boomerang was kind of a cool new item and interesting, like to learn how to use it. But for me, mostly it was like also we had our new lighting effects from the GameCube being I guess Wii or whatever, but GameCube rendering, and we had all the nice little torches in this dungeon and the little flies flying around and stuff. I loved. I'll never forget the first time I opened a door and the dirt fell down.
Yes.
You just moved your hands right now. Is that what you were thinking too?
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Like, grab it moves it, it falls.
We were both there in the same moment just now as we were talking about it. It goes, and the dirt falls. And what's so cool is it felt so real. Oh, and the chains. I mean, this is more of a Twilight Princess thing, but it's the first time you experience it. A locked door has chains, and when you unlock it,
the lock falls.
Actual physics happen, and the chains actually fall.
Yes.
That never happened before,
Right.
And it was the first time where I was like, ooh, I really, really feel like I'm in like a real world. Ocarina of Time was fantastic, but you're always kind of translating it a little bit.
Yes, as to what it would look like. And I think Twilight Princess did it for us because, we had Wind Waker, which Toon Link in the Toon world is wonderful, but I think Twilight Princess put all of that, like, it's real. It looks more real. It's more realistic.
Yeah.
And I think it set the path to, Skyward Sword. Some people have mixed feelings about Skyward Sword, but, I think it set the path to what we could later expect with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I found myself, as I reflect back, thinking Twilight Princess, what I felt was missing from it, I got with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. The real feeling, like hearing people talk.
Yes.
I think we got more of that in Twilight Princess opposed to previous games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it set the path for what we could expect with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom so many years later.
And I also think that speaks to your point of like, it can be a little difficult to go back into Twilight and play it. Or even when I did the Skyward Sword HD, it was a little, you're like, oh, right. Well, okay, fine, invisible walls. But when it came out, it felt like the biggest thing possible.
Right.
And Ocarina
it was so
did
different,
too.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And then Breath, definitely. For me, that is kind of the three where it goes Ocarina, Twilight, Breath are like kind of the keystones for me.
Right.
And also speaking to the art style, with Skyward, they did the painterly thing, but they kind of leaned back into the cell shading. And then I honestly think Nintendo kind of found the exact perfect happy medium with Breath and Tears. Where we still have cell shading, but we got some kind of realistic looking graphics. You know what I mean? It can be very beautiful, but it doesn't have to be super real.
Right.
Breath of the Wild doesn't look as real as Twilight Princess, you could say. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm getting a little off topic here. But for me, the Forest Temple, was my first time really you do a lot of things before you go to the Forest Temple in Twilight Princess, but that's that first moment where you're like, oh, I'm in a dungeon again. It's been a while, and it feels really real, and it's actually a little scary, and I feel like I could just wipe my finger on the mossy logs that are part of this dungeon, and so that's why I chose to pick it.
Okay. You will see that appears on my list.
Yeah, so it was interesting. The whole time I was talking about this, I was kind of reading your face, and I was like, Carly's holding some things back right now, and I think it might be on her list, and we'll see.
It is. Okay, but
What's your 5?
It's not my number 5. My 5 is the Temple of Time.
Fascinating.
So...
It's the first day of school, and I'm walking around downtown Chicago with hundreds of other students. Everyone's getting back from summer break, and you can tell that they're happy to see each other after a couple months. For me, however, it's been a little longer. Hi, I'm David, and I want to introduce you to Returning Student, a documentary podcast that I've been making about my return to a college that I left 20 years ago. I'm back in the same city, at the same school, the same student ID number. Everything else feels completely different. My fellow classmates are literally half my age. My professors work in my industry. Sometimes I wonder why I've come back at all. But then I get the opportunity to sit down with one of my professors and have a conversation with them, which usually yields a little bit of wisdom. You can find the show on all major podcast providers, as well as our website, returningstudentpodcast.com. A lot has changed over the past 2 decades.
All right, we are back. Carly, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to tell everybody that the Forest Haven is the island, and you go to the Forbidden Woods to rescue Makar, and the boss is Kaleidomos.
Kaleidomos, which is big hanging plant, right?
Yes, and you use the boomerang to cut down the blue arms.
Yep.
So, as we suspected, another plant.
Another big old plant. I mean, that fits for the Forest Dungeon. You also do boomerangs for the infection in Jabu Jabu. Is that a similar kind of thing? You're like going up there and breaking down the vines or whatever. I guess I'll go with my number 3 here. Let's just get into this.
Here we go.
My number 3 is Hyrule Castle.
Okay.
I think I'm very much going off atmosphere in my choices, is what I'm realizing as I'm doing this. Like, Goron Mine's cool, fun mechanics with the boots or whatever, but it's really like when you enter it, are you feeling something as you enter is what I'm realizing in a lot of my selections. Though, actually, no, I'm looking at my second and thirds here, and they're a little bit more technical. They're a little bit more puzzles. But anyway.
Okay.
I just realized. So Hyrule Castle is my 3rd pick. I loved Hyrule Castle in Twilight Princess. I love that it's like raining when you get in. You're doing the surrounding courtyards and stuff like that. I actually enjoyed just kind of some of the classic just combat battles that you have to do while you're navigating the interior spots. And I also recall that when I played Ocarina of Time, I guess Ganon's Castle is what they call it in that game or whatever it is. You might remember in Ocarina, like each previous dungeon is slightly represented by like one room,
yes.
you know? And that's fine. That's cool. Little mini rooms.
To break the curse. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was a little underwhelming for me in Ocarina. It was fine. I was like, oh, I like this, but I could have used like 2-3 more of each one of these rooms or whatever.
Right.
You know? And so some of the kind of like melancholy, it felt bigger. So going to Twilight Princess Hyrule Castle, I was like, I don't know what to expect, and the previous 2 dungeons are a little tight. They're a little fast.
Yes. Yes.
They're a little, we've spoke about one of them already, but they're a little like the epicness of some of these early dungeons, they do start to get a little bit more edited down or whatever. And so I was kind of like, well, is Hyrule Castle going to be the same? And it is to a degree, but I really, really enjoyed being out in it's really the courtyard that I love so much, but also just navigating up in all the stair spaces and the battle spaces is cool too. And then of course a Zelda? Infected Zelda is at the end of Hyrule. No, that's the one before. That's Twilight, Palace of Twilight or whatever it is.
Zelda?
No. She's in that Hyrule Castle. Yeah, I'm misremembering.
Yeah, she is. She's there.
A version of her.
Yes. A version of her is there.
Mm-hmm.
And I have Hyrule Castle on my list as well.
That's why you're giving me this look. I was
giving
trying
you
to
this
figure
look
it out.
of,
Like,
should we just talk about it now?
Is it your number 3? If it's not, then let's save it.
I think it's
Don't
up
edit.
there.
Oh, okay.
It's up there, so I'll hold off on some of my thoughts.
Well, cool. Well, maybe we'll come back to it.
Okay.
But
yeah, Zelda does appear at the end. She is there in Hyrule Castle.
What I am having a hard time remembering, I don't think, does she appear in the same room that Beast Ganon appears in as well? Or do you move to a different room?
No, so all of the first 2 phases of the final battle are in that final room.
Got it.
And she is very much like an Ocarina of Time. There's a Triforce statue, and she is in the middle. Very similar to Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, cool.
In the throne room.
I remember you do use a little bit of, if you're inclined, you use a little bit of the wolf. This is one of the areas where the wolf vision is kind of neat because you get to see the mourning spirits, the spirits who are mourning down in the castle grounds and stuff like that. And there's a little graveyard in there. It was I just loved it. I really did. And
one thing I will add, though, I think one of my favorite parts of Hyrule Castle, and I'll speak to this a little bit more, King Boblin. He talks.
What?
The big green guy.
What?
Yeah.
You're blowing my mind right now. There's no dialogue and.
Well, he doesn't. Well, I mean, it's text. But
okay.
If someone really talked.
I was like, there's an audio file in this game that I didn't know about.
Is this thing on?
That's on me. You said talks. That works. Yeah, in the context of the game, it makes perfect sense.
But yes, King Boblin coming through at the end and just saying enough.
Yes.
Like he says something along the lines of, I always align myself with the stronger side. Like he doesn't want to fight you anymore.
And that's why he's switching.
And he's done. Take the key.
And he's kind of really like, he's that recurring character throughout.
Yeah,
that you actually build a relationship with.
2 other times.
At least, I think, yeah.
Yeah, on the Bridge of Eldin, and then I believe when you're trying to get your horse back.
Oh, yes. I was also kind of misremembering. I accidentally remembered when they show up at Kakariko and steal the kid as a fight, but it's not a fight. It's just a cinematic, isn't it?
Talk about some of the creepier parts. You've got the child, Colin is his name?
Yeah.
Just
hanging from a stick.
Just hanging from a stick.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, the Bowman thing. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess we'll come back to it.
Yes, we will definitely circle back to that.
What is your number 3 then?
Okay. So, number 3.
Yeah.
Snow Peak Ruins. I'm trying to read your laugh.
I want you to talk about Snow Peak Ruins.
Okay. I'm going to talk about Snow Peak Ruins. First, I think just the design. Mm-hmm. This mansion in the snow. At the top of the peak of the mountain. First, I like the snowboarding, that snowboarding to actually get to the actual mansion. But Yeto and Yetta, what a couple. They are Hyrule's number 1 couple at this point.
I love it.
That is, the wife she's sick and she can't remember. So she sends you on this wild goose chase of, here's the key. It's in this room and it's a pumpkin. And then the next one is a block of goat cheese. Yep. And I like Midna's personality a lot in this game. Just like, what are we doing here? Like, this person cannot be trusted. We cannot trust her. Like, could we figure this out? I think what frustrates me a little bit about Snow Peak Ruins is that, like with all of these ice puzzles, like the ball and the chain makes everything easy. Once you get it, but until you get it, you have to go up and around and through different doors and put the cannonball through, those spots in the wall. So I think it can get frustrating at times, but I do like the callback to the ice cavern with all of the ice block puzzles and. Yeah,
that's noted. Yeah, you're right.
But I think one of the things that I like a lot is I like the boss. It is again in the top 10. Creepiest things that have happened in Zelda, where she's like, the mirror, it's just so pretty, and then her face completely turns and it's like, not take mirror.
Yep. Yeah.
And
it still gets me to this day.
The first time I saw that, I'm pretty sure I jumped like 6 feet.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening?
Talk about the panic moment before the fight.
Yes. And then the music throughout is wonderful, but the boss music. But then at the end, after you beat it, you're like, where's the piece of heart? Like, it's coming, or, the heart. And Yeto just comes in and throws you out of the way. And it's kind of funny. And he's just telling the wife, you're so beautiful. And like they hug and all the hearts come out. And it's it's one of those heartwarming moments. But like I said, the dungeon aesthetic, I think, is one of the first things that drew me to it. It's different than what we've normally seen.
It presents as not a dungeon.
Right. Right.
Like
but
it's a house.
Right. And the first time, when she says, "Oh, the key's in here," I'm like, this is too obvious. There is definitely not a key in this treasure chest. Like, I can tell you. But the key is actually a heart, because the lock on their bedroom door, which is the boss's chamber, is a heart.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
It's cute.
I didn't think about the boss's chamber being their bedroom. Of course it is. Yeah, there are things I like a lot about Snow Peak Ruins. I also kind of enjoy that there is a little bit of verticality with some of the puzzles where you're going over some rooms and you realize, you're on beams above other rooms. And once you realize where you are in the building, it kind of gets interesting.
Yeah.
But hot take, Snow Peak did not make my top 5.
Okay.
But I didn't want to kill your enthusiasm.
That's okay.
Yeah, well, yeah. No, I think all your points are valid. And I think there are some really wonderful things going on in Snow Peak. But it wasn't enough for my top 5.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there are. I think I touched on everything. Yeah. My big thing, creepy vibes.
Yeah.
That, and I made the joke, Yeto and Yetta, they're Hyrule's #1 couple at this point.
Yeah, I concur. Curiously, the size relationship is odd. She's tiny compared to him, but sure, that's fine.
But it definitely, like I said, I got those, creepy vibes. But then at the end, when Yeto busts through the door, he just shoves Link out of the way, and that made me laugh really hard.
Yeah, I know that is nice.
There was a lot more personality in Twilight Princess throughout the game. Like Midna, you can kind of sense her sarcasm. Everyone kind of has more of a personality this time around.
I agree. Absolutely.
So a little more character development.
I will say what I'll give to Snow Peak is I like that they did a twist. The reason it's a little bit lower for me is that I remember every time. Here's the thing. There are certain things about Snow Peak I really enjoy. Snow Peak Ruins or whatever. Yeah. I like Yeto and Yetta. I like that it's a little I like that it's equally creepy to be inside the house where it's nice and warm tones and you're going to do weird things, and it's just as weird and creepy to be in the frozen areas outside with those frost giant thingies. But every time I get to Snow Peak, I have this weird emotion where I'm like, can I just skip this one? I don't know why. I don't know why. It's so weird.
Well, then I'm going to be curious to hear your next ones, because I have feelings about some of those dungeons in Twilight Princess. There are a few that I'm like, okay, I hope we never have to do that again.
Snow Peak is one of them for me where I admire it and I get it. But for some reason emotionally that one doesn't trigger for me. However, I do love that I do love how it fits into Zelda fandom and the things that are there. There's just, maybe it's a David problem. I think I got into it and it's well, this is a house, not a dungeon, even though also I think it's cool that they gave it a twist. You know what I mean?
Right. It doesn't feel like the normal.
Well, I was like, this wasn't an Ocarina of Time. No, I'm just joking. I'm just making fun of myself now. But yeah, wonderful, wonderful dungeon. Glad. So it was number 3 for you?
Yes.
So my number 2, oh gosh, now I'm getting nervous. It's kind of interesting.
I love this.
Yeah, well, this is when it gets fun, because it's everyone has the right to love certain things about how they, we all love to love things. And at the end of the day, that's really what it's about. My second favorite. Yeah. Second favorite dungeon is City in the Sky for me.
Okay.
I adore City in the Sky. I love navigating. I love the vertical puzzles. I love the hookshot will never get old for me. I always love the hookshot. I love that they do some of the things where you're kind of moving along the paths and stuff, you're hanging onto things and moving through the paths. I like that if you'd snap onto one area and you'd have to look around and also wait for platforms to move to figure out where to go next. I love that if you missed, you just fell to your death or whatever. And there was kind of fun high stakes there. It was a playground. It's a playground. It's a play set. And so that's why City in the Sky works for me.
If I never had to play City in the Sky again, I would be thrilled. If there was a way to warp and still get what you need out of there. And I think a lot of it is at that point, you're getting close to the end.
Yeah.
with, as you're saying, oh, if you fall, you fall. I don't want to tell you how many times I fall when I play that, but I agree. When you get the claw shot, you kind of feel like Spider-Man. You're going zipping around side to side, and you got to go through everything. But what an epic boss battle at the end with Argorak, the dragon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super cool. Also, I think some of my satisfaction with City in the Sky isn't necessarily even City in the Sky. It is that double hook shot when you learn that you can increase and decrease your altitude. And so it's not just about, sometimes the hook shots are always fun, but like even in Ocarina, sometimes it's like, well, just find the dot thing and that's where you're going to shoot. And if it's connect the dots, that's not creative at all.
Right.
Right. And so that's where the hook shot sometimes fails as a puzzle device for me. But what was cool in City in the Sky and other parts where you use the hook shot is that once you get the double, it's not just obvious. It's not just snap to a thing and then look for the next thing to snap to. There are plenty of moments where if you snap to one on the ceiling, you're like, well, I guess I'm going to go up and down and look all over, and other things are moving.
And some of them you have to be quick with because once you latch onto it, it starts to drop.
Yes.
There's a lot of you latch on and then like the vines, like through the fan at one point. Like I remember, like you can barely see that there are vines like in a fan piece of things that you have to get up to. So it does make you think.
Absolutely. And so for those reasons, I really like it.
Again, it's not one of my favorites, but like you said,
it was so fun. As I was talking about it, I saw your face and I was like, oh, I think this is her Snow Peak.
I got to work on controlling my face. No, but it did this time around, as I was watching it and, gathering my notes, a lot of Wind Blight Ganon vibes from Breath of the Wild, right? When you feel like you're up there and it's windy, it's raining. I think it might be sunny in Breath of the Wild. I don't remember 100%, but it's windy up there. Like you're so high up. That's all I could think of.
Fascinating. That's cool. I'm gonna have to consider that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. The Ukus or whatever, I'm neither here nor there. They're kind of weird and creepy, whatever.
Yeah.
I just loved the hook shot in Twilight Princess so much that when I got to a dungeon where I just got to use it in all the different ways,
right?
I was having so
and then
much
you
fun
get
with
another
it.
one, and it just makes life so much easier.
Technically, I think it's the claw shot. I'm misspeaking, but anyway,
Hook shot, claw shot.
That's all right.
We got it.
So, second for you.
Oh, goodness. Second for me, Arbiter's Grounds.
Wow. We are going in different directions, and I love it.
It was not always a favorite of mine.
Yeah.
This took some time to grow on me. But the spinner reminds me of Tony Hawk's Underground. When you're linking into the rail puzzles and you're jumping from side to side with like the blade traps and things, all I can think about is I'm playing Tony Hawk Underground, where like I should be collecting the letters of Skate right now.
Yeah, it's always like just hitting the rails.
Yes.
There are elements about Arbiter's Ground I absolutely love. Love the spinner. Love some of the puzzles that come with the spinner.
But some of it
and some super cool vibe graphics, as we've been kind of saying in this episode.
Yeah.
With the little bugs in the sand and stuff like that.
Yes.
Things coming off the walls. There were some really standout moments in Arbiter Grounds. Again, where you're having this like, oh, this is like, the Spirit Temple.
Yes.
But like, oh, this is what it's really like,
Right.
It's
like
really well made.
This prison that it was once a prison. And, this is the first time we see re-deads, I think. And so, of course, giving me the heebie-jeebies always when you hear that screech. Mm-hmm. Everyone gets a little worried. But like I said, I love the spinner. I like some of the callback, with Ocarina of Time, because with the pose, if you think of in the Forest Temple and Ocarina of Time, you had to find the 4 Pose sisters. And then with this, you had to find that. So again, I like the connections. I'm someone who might have ranked high because of connections, because I love it. That's how my brain works. But
I remember the second half of the dungeon being a kind of coming down in energy a little bit. I remember there was a certain point where I'm like, oh, I think I'm just in a bunch of rooms. And that's where it kind of falls for me. But then there's the awesome boss battle at the end. Literally one of my favorite boss battles of all Zelda games ever. I've talked about it 9 times on this show already.
Of course. I really like that this is really the first time that we have the ability to change between Link as a human and Link as a wolf on demand.
Yes, you're right.
Right? We don't have to, we can utilize that. It's a good opportunity to, okay, if I really need to get through the sand quick, like maybe it makes sense to be Wolf Link, or, trying to figure out when is it to our advantage to do that, when is it our advantage to be in the human form. So, definitely some creepy vibes. It took me the first few times I played to, I'll play this with the lights on and, in the
Yeah.
middle of the day and, not at night. But it grew on me. And I think I like what leads up to it. And I also like at the end when you get to see the Mirror of Twilight and the
Yes.
sages come down and they talk to you. And there's a lot of history there.
Very rewarding story moments after this dungeon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whoa!
Jinx.
You owe me a soda. I remember playing the dungeon in Tears of the Kingdom by the Gerudo, and there were portions of that where I was like, "Ooh, it feels like the Arbiter Grounds," and I thought it was a cool emotion. It was a fun thing to remember. Cool, I love it.
Well,
Yeah,
it's funny because when I first, when you first see Arbiter's Grounds, well, not even, you see where the mirror chamber is.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like a coliseum. I'm like, what are
Yes.
what are we going up to at this point? And then to come to find out, it is just ancient prison.
ancient prison, and then Coliseum-esque once you get to the top, I guess.
Yeah, and I think there is that statue that's in the middle of the sand at the top, and someone says it's the goddess of the sand from the Gerudo Desert initially. Who knows?
Interesting.
But yes, like I said, I think the spinner and the amount of times you get to actually use it in the dungeon, big fan.
Yeah, very cool.
And the boss fight.
Boss fight. Talked about it a million times, but do you have any? But you've never been on the show to speak about it. Do you have anything to say about the Twilight fossil?
Yes, Star-Lord. No, I think it's fun to go back and forth, and it's everything is something different. I feel like we're not. This is not just the typical yes, we're going to sword slash the same part 3 times in a row. Rinse, wash, repeat. We know, but I like the side to side with the jumping of the spinner and. Kind of wasn't expecting that, after you break the spine at first. You do that 3 times, but then the head comes back to life and starts coming around. So it was unexpected.
Yeah, that's a whole fun chase thing the second half. I remember the first time just spinning down into the thing and kind of avoiding the other, I guess, re-deads or whatever, skeletons, whatever they are coming around. I remember the first time that I hit the spine, I was kind of like, is this what I'm supposed to do? Am I supposed to
is this
break
it?
this thing's back? and you go for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a pinball machine, between all of those, if they're re-deads.
Yeah, the little bumpers.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
So,
Yeah.
But yeah, just something different. But I've warmed up to it, and I really enjoy it now. So
yeah, I'm really pleased that you actually brought that to the conversation. It's making me think a little bit higher of it too. It looks like for me it was on. Well, maybe we'll talk about our lower list later. I don't want to keep doing it.
Sure.
So my number 1, and I am fine with this and very confident and very happy to have it be my number 1.
Okay.
I love Lakebed Temple.
Okay.
I love it. I liked the Water Temple in Ocarina of Time from the day one. I know there's the joke about people not liking the Water Temple. I remember playing Ocarina of Time and my favorite kind of dungeons are the puzzle box dungeons.
Okay.
Where it's you do this thing here and it literally changes and recontextualizes the whole dungeon, and you have to kind of memorize the whole dungeon and consider it in 3D space. I just adore those kinds of dungeons.
Yeah.
And the water dungeons oftentimes often can use that. And also in the early Zelda games, water is one of the easiest things to use as an elemental systemic variable.
Right.
Meaning it's like in Ocarina of Time and by extension here in Twilight Princess, it can just it's a polygon that can move up and down, and it's very easy. You can assign swim. I also liked the level in Super Mario 64. The water goes up and down.
Yep.
It's an element, but it doesn't have to be systemic. This is fire, and this is what fire does, or this is cold, and this is what cold does.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Okay.
You kind of don't need a physics engine to run water simulations in puzzles. Sometimes it's just a nice, easy thing. Where now it recontextualizes the level, and the water goes up and down. Okay, fine. What was super cool about Lakebed Temple for me is it was a combination of 2 of my favorite kinds of puzzle box puzzles.
Okay.
It was, first of all, okay, we're going to play with some water. Water's going to push things. Water's going to move things. Water's going to fill things up.
Yeah.
Love it. And a super cool, kind of complicated move the staircases around puzzle.
Yes.
If you change this staircase, it's going to change the
water's
context of
gonna
the
flow
other
here.
staircase, and it's going to change how this
Right.
thing flows. Love it, love it, love it. I love that kind of stuff. And
Okay.
also aesthetically, now not so much vibes with this one for me, compared to Forest Dungeon or anything like that. And that's what I realized. My last 2 have almost nothing to do with their aesthetic. It was just so fun to play in them.
Yeah.
But there is a little bit with Lakebed where the GameCube rendered water in a very impressive way. We see it as pretty standard stuff these days, but in the early days, it had something in its code or its engine or something. Just GameCube in general had some really beautiful water, and it's not a physics engine. It is just hard coded, but having the water pour down the stairs as you're walking up and down and seeing it ripple and working on the different, seeing the water build up and having it feel like water was really cool. A lot of fun.
I think I wrote for my notes about the lake bed temple water slides, because who doesn't love water slides?
Oh, cool.
So
yeah,
it did not make my top 5 list, but of the water dungeons, I feel like water dungeons get a bad rap. I think people know that it's a water dungeon and they're like, we're going to play with the water level. This may or may not be enjoyable. This may not be something I want to do.
I surmise, if I may, that the water dungeons in Zelda games don't lend themselves well to when people are like using a walkthrough. Because if you're using a walkthrough, it is kind of go here, do this, go here, do this, go here, do this.
Right.
Which is fine. And people have the right to use walkthroughs when they play games and all the rest. I personally try to not. I find I would rather be lost for 3 months and just have it be my own experience. And that's how I like to play games. However, that's maybe what happens in a water dungeon, any of them. The one that truly was a little tricky, but in my memory, is the Majora's Mask water dungeon, where you're actually going through the currents and you're trying to find, water, little whirlpools and stuff at the right times and stuff. I remember that one being just a touch tricky, and you're fully swimming underwater as Azora. But part of the fun of these puzzle box dungeons is just the decoding of how it works.
Yes.
Okay, I hit this in Ocarina of Time. Okay, I play my ocarina here and the water goes here. Okay, so what did that mean for the 5 other places I've been already?
Right, that we're already underwater.
And then I go over here and let's bring the water to half. If I do it that, or maybe when you get a real good water puzzle, and some of this shows up in the Twilight Princess water temple, it's like, well, it's not just about the water being at state 1, 2, or 3. Sometimes it's about the water moving from state 2 to 3.
Yes.
And you have to take action while the water's filling up somewhere or something like that.
Or like the water wheel doesn't move, or like that carousel looking thing won't move without the water moving. So.
And there's no actual physics happening there. That's all hard code, but it's just fun. And so I love that the only, that one has the cool spiders in it and everything. It's graphically a little redundant. You get into that main room and everything kind of looks like the same palacey stuff, but it's all good.
It did remind me a little bit of the ancient cistern in Skyward Sword, just because that middle, it looks like a bulb of garlic. That's what I think of when I see it. But that really, like that middle space of where you go down to the final boss. I love the boss music. The boss fight was good. I mean, it's your standard rinse, wash, repeat, which we're used to. But
Lake Bed Temple?
Yeah, more feel.
Yeah, that boss is one where it's a little bit more style than substance.
Right.
That boss, it's if you watch it and as you're playing, it feels epic. But really, it is kind of hook shot to the eye. It's a little, and that was kind of happening in video games back then. Remember, like the God of War games and the Shadow of the Colossus games, where it was kind of like your character's going to do something really cool, but you're probably just pushing the A button. There was a time in video games where that's. Actually, Shadow of the Colossus was one of the games that was able to have that not be the case. They actually allowed the epic thing to be the level. So I shouldn't actually include that as an example. And so the big fish feels cool to play, but at the end of the day, there's not too much
much happening.
Yeah, not too much happening as a boss battle.
I will say that before you go into the Lake Bed Temple, and even after, some amazing cutscenes. I think some of the best. Is that the
Zant stuff, or is it?
Yeah. So the first, before you go in, you hear about the interlopers and what happened and how they were banished to Twilight. And it's the weird scene where Link and Ilia.
Oh, the little nightmare scene. Yes.
And then their eyes turn and she's holding a knife. And then there's a bunch of her floating upside down. And
you're
like, what am I about to walk into?
Yep.
And then afterwards is when you first meet Zant. Like you first see him in real life.
Right, yeah.
So, again, I'm a fan of the story, so that also helps.
So where does that, is that basically Dungeon 6 in Twilight Princess? Is the second set of 3? Because there's like the first 3 to get the thing, and then the next 3 is the mirror, I think, right?
Yeah, so Lake Bed is actually the third.
Oh.
Because you get the fused shadow
it's the first of the
fused shadow to complete what
you're putting her
Midna
crown
has.
together.
Yes.
And that's when Xant says, guess what? I messed things up.
Yes.
And then you go get the mirror to fix the Xant stuff. And then it's
Yes.
like, and then let's complete this. And that's where we get our 9. Yeah.
You got it.
333. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm waiting at bated breath. What is Carly's favorite number 1 dungeon in Twilight Princess?
I feel like I might get some slack for this. I'm going to say it, but like you owned up to the Lakebed Temple, I love Hyrule Castle in this game.
Okay. Oh, of course, you haven't said it yet. It's your top. I love it. Let's do it.
You know what? I'm just going to own it. I went back and forth about Arbiter's Grounds and Snow Peak Ruins, but I just love Hyrule Castle in this game. I think it gave me at least what I was missing in Wind Waker, because in Wind Waker you only are in the castle. It's not even, right?
It's almost not a game. Yeah.
It's not even really much in that game. So it gave a little bit to that. The first, when Midna breaks through the Twilight Barrier, she realizes what power she has. She turns into this spider and she takes whatever, this sword, this dagger, and she just stabs it. And it's an epic scene. And then it's raining and, the music it's getting there. But like you had mentioned earlier, the courtyard, the graveyard, and like I had mentioned, the King Bulblin fight.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm so glad you're bringing all this to the table.
So that kind of gets it started. The other thing I really enjoyed, too, was the resistance group. Your friends come to help you.
Oh, yeah.
You're standing on, not the ledge, but, you're in an outside part of it. And, you see the gate opening up for the boss key and you're going to go after it. And then all of a sudden, the screen goes black and you're like, what's happening? And all of the enemies start to fall and you see the hawk fly, and that's really nice.
Wow, you're bringing all of this back. I forgot about some of this. Yeah, wow.
So they come and they help you out.
Oof.
So there's that. I do wish the castle had more to it. I felt like the outside was more exciting than the inside.
Yeah.
Until the end. There was the one where you had to, light a lantern and stand on the step and then use the Gale boomerang. I would have expected more puzzles toward, at the end. But sometimes I wonder if they do that intentionally because they're preparing you for a bigger battle at the end.
Yeah, and come to think of it, there aren't. Well, yeah, I guess there's some puzzles in some of the castles, but I feel like the castles sometimes start leaning. They gradiate towards combat because you are kind of
right, because that's what you're getting ready for.
Yeah.
Now that in hindsight, because now we have Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, where we have a legitimate Hyrule Castle that is
so good,
beautifully designed, and it is everything that I would have hoped that this Hyrule Castle would have been.
Yes,
that's what I would have envisioned going into it. So it's hard to talk about it, first experiencing it, wow, this is really cool. And that's what I'm trying to go back to. But Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild kind of put what I had always hoped this Hyrule Castle would be.
If the Twilight Princess castle makes the Ocarina castle feel small, then the Breath of the Wild castle makes the Twilight Princess castle feel small.
Yes.
And I'm cool with that growth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know you said you didn't really think too much about the boss battles at the end, but this was a pretty epic.
Oh, I will speak.
4 phases.
Yes, this is one of the best
Ganondorf
boss battles, end of game battles in all of Zelda game history.
Yeah,
it's well designed. It's interesting. It's epic. It's
when Ganon possesses Zelda, that first. So when we were talking, is Zelda in there? Yeah, she's up against the glass and her head is down. And Midna is, pressed up against the glass like, oh my gosh, I hope she's okay. And then it's when Ganon is possessing her and her eyes just pop open. Midna goes flying and it's like, they really put some thought into how this was going to work. And then it just, obviously the typical tennis match.
Right. Then we get into some of the Zelda. So sorry, not Zelda tropes, but some of the Zelda classics.
Yes.
And I remember when we were doing tennis match with Zelda, I was like, oh, okay, cool. We all know we're calling back Ganondorf from Ocarina.
It's a classic. It's a classic move. But then I did like that there was the beast form, that you did get to use your wolf form. Because I do feel like that. I know for myself, I tended to play as much as human Link as possible. Yeah. I don't think I really embraced Wolf Link right away, at least the first few times that I played.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar.
But I did like the whole idea of playing as the beast.
And not only are you using Wolf Link to sumo wrestle the beast, but that's also another natural progression. So you sumo wrestle the goats, and then you sumo wrestle the actual town people, then it's the Gorons, and this
Yes.
mechanic, like
Of
it
this
levels
hold
up.
and throw.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's one of the reasons why I think that this boss battle at the end of Hyrule Castle is so notable, is because all of the different actions are things that you've been prepping for when you didn't even realize
Right.
it in other parts of the game. There is a really nice progression there.
Yeah.
And it's also a cool twist that it's like, oh, but you're doing it, you know the mechanics, you know the on-screen cues, but now you're doing it as the wolf with the huge hand because the hand's so strong.
Right. Yeah, and then, you come down and you're fighting on horseback with Zelda, and I almost feel like even though, it's implied that Midna, something had happened to her, I almost feel like they kind of cheated Midna out of this. Like, I like that Zelda helps us on horseback, you know. Obviously, it's a call to her with the light arrows and the typical, but I almost wish we could have fought alongside Midna in this final battle.
So how would it
work? Right? Like, we'd have to rewrite it a little bit. Because, again, she
doesn't come back to the end.
No, she's not even present in that part because it's, implied when Ganon comes out, he's got the fused shadow like her helmet type thing, and it cracks and falls.
Oh, yeah.
But then there's that final sword battle, and I loved it. I thought it was epic.
Yeah, the fire everywhere, which is also a callback to Ocarina.
Yeah, and there was a lot of button mashing with you could chance with Ganon.
Whoa.
Yeah, and it was like if you mashed your button fast enough, like it would be like the sword would overtake him and then he would back up and you would have your time to really get in there and do that. So I think it's nice too because more towards the end you get to use a lot of those hidden skills that you get from the wolf. From the Howling Stone, I think you get a few opportunities to use that, especially the final blow or the final, what is it? The final blow?
Final strike or whatever
Final
it's called.
strike, yes.
Like that. Yeah.
It's nice that you get to use that. So.
Yeah, that is cool. You're absolutely right.
So I'm here for, the ending. I thought, like I said, this Hyrule Castle, the vibes.
Yeah.
The vibes, the music, but the boss fight at the end, I think, really is what pushes it ahead. And I know that some people say, this is my disclaimer. I know that some people say, oh, the design isn't really that great. But for what we went from with Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker, like, this was it. Like, that first time I saw it, I was like, we're really in the castle. This is great.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So.
And I guess I've never fully, as we should though, I've never fully thought about the Ganon battle as being the boss battle of Hyrule Castle, but it absolutely is.
Yeah.
And that's a factor to consider. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you said, as we were going through the lists of, how many dungeons are in each game, is it that people count Hyrule Castle or they don't? Because it's just implied that that's where you go at the end.
I've always counted it as a dungeon, personally, and in any of the games. I don't know. It usually feels like it is. And it's always slightly abbreviated.
I think if it's anything with a serious boss battle like it is, at least in my mind. I mean, there's also people say temples versus dungeons, and we could get into semantics.
Yeah, right. Yeah, my semantics interpretation is that dungeons are the colloquial kind of like that's what the category is.
Right.
And it's okay. A palace can be a dungeon, but a dungeon isn't necessarily a palace. I don't even know how it works. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. We can speak about the dungeons and then they have their like names.
Their specific names. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how the heck do we turn this into a list? We didn't have any doubles at any spot.
No.
Okay, wait. Can I use your pen?
You sure can.
And maybe some of your paper here?
Yeah.
All right. Let's try this.
I've got some scratch paper here, too.
Oh, okay. Sure. I'll just do the back of your notes here if that's okay.
Okay.
All right. So it was Lake Bed.
Lake Bed for you and Hyrule Castle for me.
And Hyrule Castle. Okay. I've City in the Sky.
Arbiter's Grounds.
And then that was my Hyrule Castle. So Hyrule Castle is going to be in there. And then yours was
Snow Peak.
Oh yeah. Then I was the Gordon Mines.
The Gordon Mines. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Goron, and your second was, or your fourth was
Forest Temple.
Right.
Which was your number 5. Right. Yes.
Yes, and then so my 5 was Forest. You're right, exactly. And your 5 was
Temple of Time.
So I think the way we usually do this is, okay, this is kind of fun. I think we got something here. I think I know how to do this. Normally when we do our top 10, we just kind of let that be the 10. We just build the list. So in this case, it would be
a lot of crossover.
Lake Bed. What if we take the highest, we had 2 doubles, a forest and Hyrule Castle, but all the others were unique.
Yeah.
Let's take the highest version of that double and have that be on the list. So
Okay.
that means that it goes lake bed or Hyrule Castle, whatever. There's no
Yes.
exact. Yeah. Okay. Let's do. I like Hyrule Castle as the top.
Okay.
Hyrule Castle has 1. Lake bed is what we get next.
Okay. For all of our water dungeon fans out there.
And then I think it's Arbiter Grounds if we're doing this right.
Sure.
And then it's City in the Sky.
I can accept this. This
A
is
very collective list here.
I like it.
City Sky. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 would be Snow Peak. It looks
Snow
like
Peak. Okay.
6. We skip Hyrule Castle,
So forest.
and I think it's Forest next. Yep,
Okay.
because that one survives. And then 7 is Goron Mines, I guess.
Okay.
And then Temple of Time is 8.
Okay. Which leaves 9 and 10, which are
Do you have a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on your list? You have. I know you said you kind of have stuff to speak about
I
all
made some notes about everything. I think the only 2 that remain, though, that we could speak to are the Cave of Ordeals, which neither of us
Yeah.
really, and then the Twilight Palace.
So okay, so I did. So here's my my 7, 8, 9, 10 or whatever.
Sure,
6,
yeah.
7, 8, 9, 10 was Temple of Time, Arbiter Grounds, Snow Peak Ruins, Palace of Twilight, and then the Cave of Ordeals
Yes, I would have went with Palace of Twilight and then Cave of Ordeals last.
as the last. Okay,
Yes.
so they may not quite make the list here. I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So without being too negative about Palace of Twilight, what makes it a little less exciting for you?
I think it is very linear. So we said, we said earlier that there is a very linear dungeon,
the one I was
and
talking
that
about.
really is it. It's. I guess I thought that there would be more when we finally made it to the Twilight Palace.
And it's really
Like,
just 2 hallways.
I'm expecting Zant to have this whole setup. I have no idea what to expect, I guess, but it was more than that. But yes, it's 2 hallways. Bring the soul from one side outside, bring the other one in, and then go up the middle, find the boss key. There's no mid-boss. I feel like there's nothing we haven't seen before.
The mechanic of the glowing ball and kind of keeping the smoke away, kind of liked it. I would have loved tons more puzzles of that. You know what I mean? It was kind of neat. Oh, I think we got our list. Yeah, actually, it really does come together. And Cave of Ordeals, I can't really speak to, and I'm fine with that.
It is exciting to watch someone play it online. I have done that before. I have not successfully challenged it myself, but maybe I'm feeling a little inspired now.
As I said in the beginning of this episode, I did play around a little bit with the kind of sibling version of this, which is the, I don't remember what it's called now, but it's essentially a gauntlet that you can queue up with the Wolf Amiibo. All right, here we go. 10 to top. Because really what I did was I looked at my 5 and 6s, and a lot of them were ones that you already mentioned as well.
Yeah.
So they got negated out. And so here we go. It's Cave of Ordeals at 10, Palace of Twilight at 9, then Temple of Time at 8, then Goron Mines at 7, then the Forest Dungeon, or Forest Temple or whatever, at 6, then Snow Peak at 5, then City of the Sky at 4, Arbiter Grounds at 3. It looks like I have terrible handwriting. It looks like I wrote Amiibo there, but it's Arbiter Grounds. Number 2 is Lakebed Temple, and then number 1, Hyrule Castle. I think we got our list.
Okay.
Woof, woof, baboof.
That was a lot.
Quite a mix. I love it. That's what's so fun about it. Would you ever expect Lakebed to be that high up?
I will thoroughly try to enjoy it when I get back home. Well, like I said, before I left, I had the chance to get to the Forest Temple and beat that. And now I'm looking for the Twilight and the Elden region, or the little bulbs of light.
Absolutely.
So this time around, I'm going to keep all of the tears
of the kingdom. I totally thought when Tears of the Kingdom got released and I saw Link with that little blue glowing thing on his belt, which we now know is just batteries.
Yes.
I was like, oh my gosh. Mixed emotions whenever you have to find the tears. Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess. I have mixed emotions about those. Sometimes they feel very fetch questy. Sometimes they're actually kind of interesting. Sometimes I'm kind of like, please don't make me do this now. Yes. And I was like, are they putting that in my Breath of the Wild?
Is this happening now too?
Yeah, that's what I thought. And it was very, very different. But anyways.
Yeah.
There was another point we were saying though, and I got a little distracted.
I'm going home to play.
Twilight Princess, the tears.
Yes.
You're about to go into Elden. That's what it was.
Yes, I'm going into Elden. But so now I'm going to keep all of our feedback in my mind and maybe try to look at things in a different light. And hopefully our listeners today, I'd be curious to hear what other people have to say.
Yeah. How do they feel about some of these results here? I'm cool with it.
People, David, people might come after you and say, water temples are no good.
And I say, that's fine. You have the right.
I know. Someone will probably say that isn't the best Hyrule Castle we have. But I think like I said, Twilight Princess came out in what, 2006?
It was around
2005, 2006 when the Wii first, the game came released on the GameCube first, or?
It was,
I forget.
what they did was, it was when the Wii came out, but I actually think, I'm now starting to remember that the GameCube version was delayed just a bit. It was like a couple weeks later or something.
Okay.
It was Wii first, and then they released the GameCube version, knowing that not everybody had a Wii yet, but they wanted...
Yes.
Maybe I'm totally wrong about this, but I think I kind of... Honestly, it was day one, both versions.
Yeah.
Because Skyward Sword was
just the Wii, but
just
that
Wii.
came...
Oh, right. It was Breath of the
years
Wild
later.
was the next one. Breath of the Wild was day one, Wii U, Switch at the same time.
Yes.
I played
But
most
like
of
I
Breath
said,
of the Wild on my Wii.
for when Twilight Princess came out in 2006 and thinking about the resources we had and what the games looked like then, I would say that this is a pretty solid list.
I love it. And at the end of the day, it's more about the conversation, talking about it all anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
Carly, this was such a treat. We haven't had much Twilight Princess content this season, and so this was an absolute pleasure to get back into it. It re-stirred up memories for me even, made me realize it's been a while since I've talked about this game that I love so much. Thank you for making the time to be here to record. I know you're in the city anyway. If people want to find you out there on the internet in any way, or is there anything you'd like to share?
Sure. So I guess I'm affectionately known to AZP as CMD. CMD, which are my initials, or were my initials before I got married, but they're actually phonetically spelled out. So my Instagram handle is CSEE_EMM_DEE, CMD.
Absolutely.
So, David, thanks so much for having me here.
Oh, this is a blast. This is an absolute treat. Thank you. If people want to find me on the internet, I'm Raptor Paint. I say it every episode or whatever. Instagrams and the X's and Threads now. I've just started up a thread. Find Raptor Paint. If people want to find information about the show, mostly you can just go to our website, anotherzeldapodcast.com, and that'll kind of get you all the links to all the things. But if you're just searching around anyway, we're Another Zelda Pod on X. We're Another Zelda Podcast on Instagram and Threads. And over on YouTube, Another Zelda Podcast. I used to tell people to go to the Facebook page too, but that's, we still put stuff there, but it's all good.
Yeah, slowly phasing out.
Mostly it's like I'm very proud of our website. We got a lot of blogs on there, some community stuff going on.
Some merchandise too.
We have a little bit of merch. Maybe I can say this. Katie has been designing more t-shirts for us.
Really?
She has like 3 designs that she's already given to me. That there's maybe I can show them to you when we're done recording here. She's got one where it's like Link, like it's original art, so that's what's kind of fun about it. She's doing her own original art, and we're gonna start putting that in the merch store too. Because right now the merch store is basically just our logo on a couple different shirts,
of course,
which is a ton of fun. Keep it simple, keep it classic. But I've been wanting to do more opportunities for merch, and one day, Katie's been such a welcomed addition to the cast this season, that she and I were just talking about it, and she's like, I'd kind of like to make some shirts. And I was like, go for it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So anyways, there might be a little bit more going in that direction.
Okay. Sounds great.
Cool. I think that's it, Carly. Thank you so much. I know you, Tyler, and I are going to go, I think, get some dinner now.
Sounds like a plan.
It's getting a little late. I'm getting hungry. I'm ready.
Yeah.
There's a little place down the street here I think we'll go check out.
Perfect.
Here in Chicago.
All right.
Cool. All right, Carly. Normally I say I'll see you next time, but thanks for being here, and hopefully I will see you again at some point for another episode.
So. Absolutely. Am I doing the outro here?
Are you what? Hey, I'll see you next time.
Okay, bye.
There it is. We got to go classic. I love it. I know I was trying to set you up for it. And I was like, how do I do it? I'll see you when I see you. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Carly.
Thanks so much.